Welcome to the Surviving BPD Relationship Breakup Podcast. If someone in your life has BPD, you know how difficult it can be, and you need to learn how to heal from those toxic relationships. And that's where this show comes in. Expert education, expert knowledge, expert insight, and delivered with compassion and empathy. With your host, counselor and trauma recovery coach, AJ Mahari. To purchase and book sessions with AJ, go to ajmahari.ca. Now your host, AJ Mahari.
BPD discard, codependent fantasy. Are you stuck pissing into the wind, thinking that's a shower, in the cognitive dissonance of the relationships that aren't really at all what each of you have thought they were from the beginning and how wonderful they are? Stay tuned, listen, it's a really long podcast, has a lot in it, and there's a twist near the end from the commenter that might benefit you to also hear. Have an interesting commenter here who's laid down a lot of comments on many different videos of mine recently. And we're going to start off with this, but make no mistake about it. This is a commenter who denies codependency, who thinks that their ex is so close to being recovered because of this, that, and the other thing. Are you kind of in that suspended place of like, well, they've been to some therapy and like, I don't know. It seems like they're sweet, but gee, they cheated on me, but like, I don't know. And I've been discarded, or am I discarded? Am I ghosted? Can I get them back? All of these different things. It's your heart. It's your head versus your heart. It's the cognitive dissonance of it all. And this probably isn't brand new news, but see if you relate to some of what this commenter is going through and putting forth, because I find this commenter to be lost, in denial about codependency, and also all over the map. And I think they said, this commenter, that I'm sort of amalgamating comments besides the one I'm going to read here. And they said that they have been studying BPD now for 3 years, I think. And I'm like, wow, no offense to anybody out there. But, you know, when you're an expert in this area, as I am out here to work with you, if I resonate with you, been working with clients for 35 years, know this from both sides, and somebody who's in the ex kind of wanting to get them back place without saying that in most of the comments, but said it in one. They're like looking for all kinds of excuses and reasons why they're right and I'm wrong. Basically, that's, what a lot of people might be doing when you really just can't handle emotionally what's really going on, what really happened, how are you supposed to make sense out of this? How are you going to survive a BPD relationship breakup, ghosting, or discard after on and off limbo and relationship recycling or not? Well, on a video I did, BPDX, or ex favorite person discarded, wanting friendship in the future. And then there's something about codependent something. I'm sorry, I can't see the whole title. So the commenter says, AJ, in many of your videos, you say the same thing. Healthy friendships or relationships are not possible with people with BPD. Well, very astute, and you've been paying attention, commenter, because yes, I do say that, and I have repeated that, and I will repeat it again, and I stand by it in this response to you, saying, I say the same thing quite often. Let's hear it again, shall we? That healthy friendships or relationships are not possible with people with BPD. Yeah, I stand by that. A caveat to that is, yes, some people with BPD go and get therapy. And many go into all the wrong modalities of therapy, and they don't really get anywhere with all the BPD issues and more, right? So there's that. And then people get all their hopes up thinking, oh, this is going to work out after because they've had 2 years, 3 years, a year, 6 months of therapy. Or they just started therapy, so it's going to be okay. Well, that's a red herring, and that is also part of codependent denial. And that's you, anyone who relates to this, not just a commenter, it's you wanting the fantasy no matter how much the bad is really so bad that you lose yourself, that you get stressed out, that you get lost, that you get confused, that you abandon yourself, and that it can not only affect your physical, emotional health, your mental health, but your physical health, you know? So it's really important that people get working with someone, and like I'm out here to work with you if I resonate with you, because there's a reason why I say, quote, the same thing often. Healthy friendships or relationships are not possible with people with BPD. Now, is there a caveat to that? Well, maybe in a very small percentage of cases. When you think about the aggregate of all the people with the patterns of BPD, let alone all the people that are diagnosed with it, it's an ever growing and increasing number of people, whether they're diagnosed or not. So the thing about that is there are some people that will get therapy in the right modality, stick with it, because people with BPD can heal and can recover, unlike narcissists. So there's a big difference between BPD and NPD. And there's another big point as to how people with borderline personality disorder are not, quote, narcissists, unquote. Not the same thing. So, what am I doing with the information on the podcast or on my YouTube channel? Well, I'm speaking to the highest probability of most people's experience. So, I don't have time to play around. I don't have time other than the caveating I'm always doing, right? Which really probably gets on your nerves as much as it gets on mine to do it. Which is to say that, yes, there are people with BPD who are going to heal and recover. Yes, there are people with BPD that have healed and recovered and left it behind. But you have to gauge the reality of that. And you need to get into your own healing and recovery work, because you can't gauge it when you're stuck in the middle of cognitive dissonance and the intermittent reinforcement cycle of the trauma bond. So you have to be able to truly understand, oh, well, when it was good, it was great, but when it was bad, it was horrible. And you have to follow your head, not your heart right now. And it's agonizing for people because it's not only the cognitive dissonance, it's the rumination. It's the you thought this person was the greatest person and the person for you, but now you're discovering, or maybe you're still new to this, but you're going to discover, if you haven't discovered already, that the person that you met and fell in love with isn't really real, isn't really who they are. And here's a key thing for you to understand as well. When people with BPD do heal and recover, again, aside from a very small percentage, I'm here to talk to most people come by my podcast or my YouTube channel with the highest probability of hitting the mark for what most people are enduring, going through, suffering, and really confused and in agony about. So I'm not here for the anomalies. I'm not here to give information about, well, this could possibly happen, but it looks like this and it isn't that. Because the thing is, it's a waste of time. Because what you need to know is that if you can relate to this commenter as I go on, that you're in denial, you're suffering cognitive dissonance, your head knows one thing, but your heart can't believe it. Therefore, you're stuck. Many people want to go back. Many people recycle the relationship again. You get the Hoover, you reverse Hoover, because you think it'll be better this time, the next time, the next time, the next time. Some people have done this 30 times plus. But there's no time for anybody, the codependent or the borderline, to have done any healing or recovery. And guess what? When people with codependency finally realize the agony they're in, and that it's not just about the borderline, that it has something to do with your woundedness from childhood, and yes, for some people that's hard to know what it is. Well, when you finally find that out, and I know all the clients I work with, most, not maybe all, but most who do the work and put in the time they need to get the work done, they will never look back. And they are now basically, they have gained and continue to gain what I'm going to talk more about soon, which is like on my YouTube channel, sort of the tagline under everything is gain emotional mastery over cluster B abuse. So that's not just about one relationship or if you've had a few. So the thing is, are you somebody out there stuck in this cognitive dissonance? Are you still trauma bonded? Are you still denying the reality of, what your head knows? Because your heart is swimming up the stream called, I really want the fantasy of this relationship. I want it back. I don't care. Like, so defying your logical brain. So the commenter, said I repeat myself a lot, and I say that, and I think they're going to disagree with me. And then the commenter said, yet many get therapy. Even with therapy, there will be occasional bad behavior. Well, that's a very vague statement that essentially, please don't hang your hat on that because it's meaningless, this sentence. Because many get therapy, yes, but how many of the people that get therapy actually heal and recover? And it depends because not all people with BPD are the same. Some don't have comorbidity with NPD or anything in cluster B. They're not narcissists ipso facto because they're borderlines. And some of them will put in the work. But the key thing I want to say about that is if and when, and I happen to know this personally, right? But if and when someone does heal from BPD and they've gone through all of that therapy and all of that daunting process, which it is, they're not going to turn back to you. I'm sorry to tell you. Just like if you get into your own healing recovery process to break the trauma bond and to get over through this cognitive dissonance and to start embracing what is your reality, what is driving the agony of your pain and lostness and rumination, the cognitive dissonance, the intermittent reinforcement. You're still trauma bonded, even if you haven't seen this person for like 3, 5, 10 years. If you've been like no contact, people are still suffering if they don't do the work to break the trauma bond and to not still be in that cognitive dissonance of rumination. And some people you can add in limerence as well. So people with BPD, when they heal and recover, they're not going to turn back to you. They're not going to do this in the relationship. Again, maybe like 0.5%, but you have to go on what the person you're with is actually really like if you can see through the fog. So then the commenter says, us partners realize they will not be perfect. Well, of course, nobody is perfect. But it's interesting where this commenter is coming from when this commenter is so imperfect himself and maybe not basing that. So then, here it comes, ladies and gentlemen. I always love it when people try to invoke that they want to gaslight me and tell me what I think and why I say what I say. And you don't have a clue. So he's going to blow it here. So the commenter says, I wonder how much of your opinion, fine, yeah, me, how much of your opinion, AJ, is based on your own negative view of the worthiness of people with BPD for love? Oh my goodness, this person couldn't be further off than they are. So they wonder how much of my opinion, by the way, I give expert information here. This is expert opinion. This is based on all kinds of things, but more than 35 years, like 35 years experience working with clients. I've read all the books. I've read all the clinical books. I have lived experience. So it's not just a freaking opinion. But if you think that, that's okay. I mean, my ego can handle it. But I mean, this guy's like, I wonder how much of your opinion. See, it's projection on his part because he's the codependent who's got all the big opinions that he can't hear what I'm saying because he's not basing his quote education in BPD on anything realistic. He's in the denying his codependency and in the intermittent reinforcement and I got to get her back and but she's had all this therapy and I really think she's close to recovery because once she said this to me and once she did that but like this but like that, and I'm going to say a bit more about what those specifically are that this commenter shared. But do you think like maybe if the person with BPD has some awareness one day and says, "Oh wow, like I can't believe I just said that to you because whatever, blah blah." Do you think that means they're close to recovery? You can't gauge it that way. It's not one maybe apology or a half ass apology or an apology without taking responsibility. And it's not. And another thing this commenter said was that his ex told him that he needs to get over her and break the trauma bond. Only he doesn't think he's trauma bonded because he doesn't think he's codependent, and he thinks she's almost recovered. Can you relate to this? Because in agony, in cognitive dissonance, when your heart is fighting your head and you're ruminating, and that was the best sex you ever had in your life, and how you're supposed to just walk away from that, and aren't you somehow meant to be after all? This isn't reality, ladies and gentlemen. This is the agony of trauma bonds, intermittent reinforcement, and cognitive dissonance, along with rumination. So back to what the commenter said. I wonder how much of your opinion, AJ, is based on your own negative view of the worthiness of people with BPD for love. Well, first of all, let me say, I don't have any skin in the game. I don't have any dog in the fight. I have had relationships with a couple of people with BPD. I had a relationship with a BPD, NPD alcoholic. I know how you feel. I've been where you are. Yes, I had 4 core traits of BPD. I was never diagnosed with full-blown BPD. I healed and I recovered because that's no joke, 4 core traits. They're going to be the most trauma-laden 4 strong core traits that matter the most that people need to heal to come back to average mental health and being able to have healthy relationships. So it's way more than first of all, it's not just my opinion. And it's not based on any negative view that I have of the worthiness of people with BPD for love. No, it's based on the factual reality of, if you don't know this for yourself, like the commenter doesn't yet, many of you are going to find this out. And it really hurts. And that's why I suggest you work with someone. And I'm out here to work with you if I resonate with you. Because it's not me saying that I have some negative opinion of people with BPD's worthiness to have or to love. It's they don't know who they are. They have a lack of identity, a lack of object constancy. They're lost. They don't know the difference between self and other in a deep, meaningful, lasting way if they're untreated, or let's face it, if they have patterns of BPD and they're not even diagnosed, let alone treated. So I'm putting down the facts here. And yeah, a lot of people don't want to hear them. But it's not that I have some negative view of my own. I don't have a dog in the fight. I don't have skin in the game. Let me repeat that. And as to worthiness, makes me uncomfortable when the commenter puts it this way, because no, I don't have my own negative view of anything. Do you think that I would be here putting up this content, working with clients if it was about me? It's not about me. It's not about just having an opinion. It's about helping people to heal. Break trauma bonds. Heal from the trauma or the woundedness of your childhood. Heal your codependency and be able to have a healthy relationship. And people with BPD need to seek a different kind of treatment. I do work with people with BPD as well, so that they can do their own longer, deeper, a little bit more demanding kind of therapy, so that they too can find the self that they lack right now, so they can start to know that self, start to love that self, have that self reparented, create a container of self. They don't have that. So how is this about my negative view? That's a projection on this commenter's part, and it's an easy place to park it. And by the way, I've never said that people with BPD are not worthy of love, or they deserve to have the worthiness of being able to give and receive love. But they don't have that unless until they basically heal and recover, because it's a long journey. So that's why, commenter, I'm always saying the same thing. Healthy friendships or relationships are not possible with like 98% of people with BPD, especially untreated, or if you are deluding yourself into thinking that your ex, because you're in this fantasy place, right, of like denial of your codependency and what's going on with your ex. And this commenter's 3 years worth of study about BPD, they've got more misinformation than, I don't know, a magnet could pick up little pieces of incidental, not important metal if it was traveling around or somebody was taking it around in some experimental fashion to see if the magnet is worthy of the best metal that could possibly stick to it or something crazy like that. I don't know if that made any sense. So people with BPD, it's not about worthiness. It's about they lack self. BPD is very much, among other things, a relational disorder, and they don't know how to love, and they don't know how to receive love, and they don't trust you. Period. And it's not about you. So it certainly isn't just me having some opinion that's based on a negative view of people with BPD and their ability to love or not. I'm simply giving you facts. And it's not what anybody really wants to hear. I get that. But you need to hear it if you want to heal and get out of the agony that you're in. So the commenter continues, because my ex, who has had therapy, really stressed the importance that I get over her. She was concerned that I have a trauma bond, etc. And that means what exactly? Does that mean she's recovered? No, not at all. Not even remotely close. That, I've had so many clients tell me that the person with BPD, when things are breaking down and maybe they've been split to devaluation and ghosted, but not quite yet fully discarded, they would Hoover back, or reverse Hoover might get their attention again. But let me just tell you, if you go back to your ex, you're going to go around the same circle, okay, and cycle again. But people have said that, and they'll sometimes think that, like if a person, like what the commenter just said, well, like she had so much awareness one day, or he had so much awareness one day, and he told me like that I'm no good, that they're no good for me. He or she said they're no good for me, and that I should get away from them, and all they're going to do is hurt me, which is basically the truth. And then you might think, well, but like, how would they know that? Did they really mean that? So sometimes people with BPD will have awareness. It's in their intellect. It's not emotional awareness as well. And so it's IQ, not, emotional quotient kind of based knowledge. And it can be fleeting insight to boot. But it doesn't mean if a borderline tells you, well, I have BPD and you probably don't want to get to know me, or, like I told you in the beginning, I had BPD. I told you I was effed up. I told you I would hurt you. You need to get away from me. Lots of people, I have lots of clients report to me, lots of people with BPD say that. It doesn't mean they're anywhere near recovery whatsoever. And the commenter continues, I think this may be one of the side effects of BPD with therapy. What would you know about that commenter? Because frankly, I don't think you know anything about that. There is still a lingering feeling of worthlessness, this commenter says, after saying that they wonder if it's just my opinion is based on my own negative view of the worthiness of people with BPD to love. What? And now the commenter is saying, there's still the side effects of therapy with BPD, which this doesn't make any sense. This isn't true. There's still a lingering feeling of worthlessness, says the commenter. Project much, commenter? Like what you said to me, I wonder if this is your opinion, AJ, because blah, 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 blah. No, it's your opinion, commenter, that you think, even when a person with BPD has had enough therapy or healed and recovered, or whatever you're talking about here, that there's still a lingering feeling of worthlessness. Commenter, somewhere inside of you, there's a lingering feeling of worthlessness. Can anybody else with a BPDX, or you're trying, or you're on and off again, you're recycling, you're in limbo right now, or you've had it in your head and you know you got to stop, but your heart's still screaming that you want them back, and you know it's going to hurt you unbelievably to do it again, but lots of people do it again and again and again and again and again and don't get anywhere. Just hurts. It's the same cycle over and over again. There is no lingering feeling of worthlessness in somebody who's completed and healed and recovered in therapy with BPD. And then the commenter says, or Maybe they have this lingering feeling after therapy, people with BPD, that they're just not good enough. No, not when they've done the work and they've got through the entirety of the therapy, which could take 8 to 16 years, in transference focused psychotherapy or object relations therapy, sometimes mentalized based therapy, but psychodynamic modalities of therapy for BPD. And so the commenter says, oh, maybe they just have this lingering feeling they're not good enough. No, I don't think so. And as somebody who's been there, healed and recovered, although I wasn't diagnosed with it and I wasn't didn't have it full blown, I can tell you, I don't have any lingering feeling. I haven't, and nor did I way back 40 years ago, have any lingering feeling of worthlessness or being not good enough. I'm just speaking as one person who knows what I know from my experience. And then the commenter continues to guess some more, or of being incompatible with neurotypicals. Well, I'll try not to be long on this soapbox, but there's absolutely no worthy evidentiary proof, as the American Psychiatric Association with hegemony of Big Pharma continues to try to slam BPD in females mostly and pretty much only, forgetting about the guys with BPD a lot, or just across the board, trying to shove together like high functioning autism or Asperger's with BPD in women only, pretty much, because they're so desperate to have it be a brain disorder, because it isn't. BPD isn't a brain disorder. People aren't born that way. Is there a heritable component? Might be, but guess what? Somebody who has Asperger's syndrome, it's not BPD, and so I'm neurodivergent. But people with BPD alone, or without, being on the autism spectrum, they're not neurodivergent. They are neurotypical. They just have all this woundedness and all of these other really terribly hurtful for them and the people that try to get close to them, brokenness and issues and trauma. The fact that somebody would heal and recover from BPD and have this just feeling lingering that they're incompatible with neurotypicals. Well, I'm not here to insult neurotypicals, but people with BPD aren't necessarily atypical or neurodivergent. And even someone like myself, I have Asperger's syndrome and I healed from those 4 core traits, my BPD and all the trauma from my childhood. I don't have any feeling that I'm incompatible with neurotypicals. Aha, really? Commenter, get a real education. Start by going to your own therapy to look at your denial of codependence. Now, the truest and most accurate thing this commenter says here, IDK. I don't know. I don't see my ex as being so far away from recovered, he means. I don't think I'm codependent, he boldly says, which is just, come on. Have you ever heard me talk about a person who goes, I don't think I'm codependent? They're in denial. It's not just a river in Egypt, The commenter says, just know that the vast majority of time we were good together. Sure, okay. Because she cheated on you. This is said in other comments, right? She cheated on him. At the end, she said she's only capable of having flings and not relationships. But they were good together. But he's not a codependent. Are you feeling the vibe from this commenter about, you might even relate to it, so I don't mean to be derogatory or judgmental, that he is super not getting himself and not really understanding the situation yet? And he said, in fact, I didn't know there was a problem until I had to leave town for the second time. And boy, does this commenter share this comment all over so many different videos of mine. On a video I did, BPD treatment, relationships end anyway, which is on the aggregate of something like 95% or more, very accurate. I can't say 95% is totally accurate because nobody knows those stats, but high probability that people with BPD don't really heal and maintain relationships. And yeah, small percentage do. But you've got to gauge where that person is. And if, like this commenter, you're fooling yourself all over the place, then that's going to be really difficult. So on the video I mentioned a minute ago, the commenter says, I've got the same question. So about BPD and treatment and the relationship not working out anyway. This same commenter says, mine, meaning the BPDX, painted me black due to the very obviously bad thing I did, leaving town 2 times on her. He's really just focused on this would be the whole thing. And there would be no other problem but that he left town twice. Well, okay, but like commenter, what are you doing? You don't sound like stable Mabel either in terms of your codependency. You're trying to have a relationship with this person, you leave town twice. That sounds very conflictual to me. Do you think maybe you ought to look at that? Maybe you ought to rethink your denial of codependency? And then in the comments said, I had no idea she had BPD. But she definitely has had treatment. That's right. Because this commenter said somewhere, I can't find all the comments at once because there's so many. But the commenter did say that his ex with BPD has been in treatment for 5 years because her family's wealthy. So he thinks that she's almost near recovery because she's been in some kind of therapy for 5 years because her family's wealthy. I don't get the connections at all. She could have been in therapy for 5 years, right? A lot of people with BPD are in therapy for 5 years, 8 years, more years, but they're not in any kind of modality that will actually help them to heal or recover from BPD because they're going to quote therapy, unquote, to have their pain witnessed, to have someone to bounce stuff off of, to have somebody to argue with, because to have support, but they'll argue with their therapist anyway because they're lost, because they don't know what they really want, because they're still not often, not all, but many with BPD in therapy that isn't the right modalities for BPD treatment to really get this healing and recovery process being made possible for people with BPD. They're just going to like therapists who just agree with them, therapists who just listen to what they say as if everything's accurate, and like it's all the partner's fault and whatever the person with BPD might say. Yeah, he says right here that she definitely has had some treatment. Well, treatment. Really treatment? Like for BPD, or just like, quote, therapy, unquote, for like, anything that doesn't help people with BPD. And then he says, probably a lot of therapy because her family's wealthy. Lots of wealthy families do send somebody, or even wealthy exes, send someone to therapy hoping they'll get better. But just because you're wealthy and you can pay for the best treatment, this kind of treatment with like some really highfalutin, $500,000 an hour psychiatrist in New York City or something who's an expert in BPD, it doesn't mean they're going to engage the process. So just because you might be a wealthy person, male or female, and your ex is borderline and you want to pay for them to go to therapy, but half the time you can't get them to go. And if you get them to go, they're not really sticking with it. And nothing's changing because it takes a long, long time. So wealth leading to, quote, therapy, unquote, it doesn't necessarily mean recovery at all. This is not the most logical thinking this commenter could be doing. And so in this comment he says, so trying to figure if it's worth to pursue. As if like, are you sure she'd even want to consider having you back after you moved away from her twice? I'm just saying, maybe not. Anyway, it's not worth pursuing, but like he's going to have to find out for himself. And maybe you're somebody out there that's still wondering about this for yourself. You're still in the middle of it. It still hurts. You're going in the cycles and the circles, and you need to learn more. Maybe you've gotten a lot of misinformation like this commenter's gotten. And he says the thing is with her, the is thing with her, I don't know. Some people, you need to like proof your writing. So this is the thing. I don't know. The thing with her, I'll just say, was a greater fear of engulfment over abandonment. Right. But she cheated on him, he said in another comment. And that was definitely, he said, he thought, out of fear of abandonment. Now because I probably talked about fear of abandonment versus fear of engulfment in this video that he's responding to. Now he wants to argue with me that he's sure and convinced, because he's such an expert on BPD, isn't he? Not. That really she had a greater fear of engulfment over abandonment. Well, how would you even know that? Because you probably wouldn't. And that's hard to measure. And they can be just equally, in maybe not equal measure, not quite 50-50. But when they get to fear of engulfment, it's as strong as when they get to fear of abandonment. And both pull away. It's the push-pull. I mean, one might be pulling you in, one is pushing you out. But it's what makes the relationships impossible. It's what triggers the emotional dysregulation of splitting, which is a major defense mechanism in BPD. And then you're going to go from you're great to you're awful. And actually, that doesn't continue through the whole relationship, because after the honeymoon phase and the first real major splits at evaluation, they don't ever see you as that mirror image of like, object other parent, good parent, never really had. You're the greatest thing since sliced bread. Won't you be my good mom? Won't you be my good dad? Which is all in the unconscious of people with BPD. But they're not even seeing you in the idealization. People really need to think about what that means. And so he, commenter goes, oh, she had more fear of engulfment than abandonment. Or she has a stable of men to pull from, and so always can fall back on another. That sounds close to recovered, doesn't it? No, not, right? And then the commenter says, I think there may be substance promiscuity as well. Well, oh, goodness gracious, she's getting closer to recovery. Not the more you reveal, commenter. And the commenter says, she told me at the end she cannot have a relationship, only flings. But he wants to see if it's worth pursuing again. And I'm not judging. I'm just saying he's going to get hurt all over again. He's kidding himself. He's codependent. He's in denial. He thinks it's just because he left town twice. I'm sure that played a role. But that isn't the only problem. If he could keep himself in the same town, which is what he says in some comment. Now, ironically enough, I'm going to be living in her town. That doesn't mean that that's the only reason why you experienced what you did, or that she had fear of abandonment, or that she discarded your butt. Okay? It's not just because you kept leaving. I mean, that wouldn't help. But it's not only that. So if you think that you're going to be back in her town, you're going to stay, going to make it all good because she's had 5 years of therapy, therapy, not quote treatment, unquote. We don't know, because she's wealthy. Her family's wealthy, and therefore she's had this therapy, and therefore she must be almost, come on, healed and recovered. Doesn't sound like it to me, commenter. What do other people think? Are you fooling yourself in any way? Can you relate to what this commenter is doing to himself? It might be hard to figure it out because it's really painful. Not hard to figure it out, but hard to deal with what it feels like to even think about it. And here's another thing the commenter says. I think she thought she was mostly healed because one time she lost her patience with me and said, quote, that hasn't happened in a long time, end quote. Well, to know what that doesn't mean she's close to recovery either. And by the way, we don't know how much time that you really spent together at any given one period of time. So maybe it hasn't happened in a long time because you were busy living in the other town, commenter. Twice, just saying. Commenter continues, I think she fell for me. Or he doesn't. Okay, I was triggering her. I was a bit insistent with her. Yeah, well, like people with codependency do have their own control needs, right? And then in another comment under that comment on the same video, this commenter says, she is sweet. I'm working on building a business selling into in the name of a certain country. I'm also looking to improve my listening and validation skills. Oh, yeah. Have you played this one on yourself recently? Do you think, now that you think that you understand BPD so much better, and some people might, in terms of the splitting and whatnot, but do you think that means, as I've had other commenters and some clients say, well, now I really understand it better, and the splitting, and I need more validation, and I think I could do a better job of that, and I could listen better, and I could validate more, and I'm sure it would work out. It doesn't work like that. No, you just throw yourself into another cycle, which you're going to get ghosted, discarded, spit out. Whatever they did the first time, they'll do it the second time and faster, and it will hurt more. And the commenter says, as well as boundary setting. So I guess they think they're better at boundary setting, and they can validate skills. They want to improve their listening because they want to see if it's worth pursuing this person with BPD who's, because her family's wealthy, she's had 5 years of therapy, but we don't know what that therapy is. And I wonder if the commenter knows what the therapy is. And she said she can only have flings, and she cheated on him out of fear of abandonment. And there's other things he said I can't remember unless I come across it, and I can't read 20 comments for one podcast episode. So I guess when they were together, he's saying things are mostly okay. And it sounds like they've been apart more than they've been together. He says, I think the cheating was due to fear of abandonment. She knew I would be leaving. No, you've got it all revolved around that. I'm sure that would be part of it. But it's not like if you're going to actually stay put in the same place she lives, commenter, that's going to make it all good because she's all so close to recovery. You're really contradicting yourself all over the place here, commenter. And your denial of codependence, and you're questioning me in a projective manner. Do I just have this negative opinion? Like, seriously, where are you coming from? What are you doing to yourself? Can anybody relate to this? Are you this confused? Are you this much still in the cognitive dissonance? Because you know what happened? I'm not judging. I'm just trying to help other people out and be somewhat educative with, this commenter's experience and what they're saying and how they're all over the map. Because so many people think, if borderline does this or that or says this or that, they must be close to recovery, right? Or they wouldn't know that. But then how does that match up with, is behavior changing? Is there more consistency? Oh, did they find out who they are? Do they know who they are? Do they know what they want? Is their hair still blue or pink or purple? Are they all tattooed up? What's going on? Like, so many people. So check in with yourself on this. Because you really want this person to be the one, but they're not. And that's why I'm out here to work with people to help you if you resonate with me. The thing is, are you somebody who thinks that, like, oh, this might be this little sign here, this one thing, in spite of all the other things that are still going on, negative, bad, abusive, this one thing, oh, she said this, he said that. So you know what? They must be almost healed. They must be almost recovered. Meanwhile, even if they were, the relationship still wouldn't work. Why? Because you're still in the throes of cognitive dissonance, codependency, your head fighting your heart and vice versa, rumination, losing yourself, abandoning yourself, putting them ahead of you, walking on the eggshells, overgiving. And the empathy, by the way, isn't altruistic, it's toxic. Because what about you? Dare I try to take on another comment that this person left on the same video? Then this commenter jumps back in with another comment, says, what I meant about the more frequent fear of engulfment is that in the beginning of our relationship, she would tell me, don't text so often. Well, that could be fear of engulfment, or it could be she was just busy with some other men, and maybe not just a man, right? Or you alone. Unfortunately, that can happen. You said you think maybe she has a stable full of men. You said that you think she's been fairly promiscuous. All of this not pointing to anything fruitful, having come from her wealthy family paying for 5 years of her having, quote, therapy, but we don't know what that therapy's been about at all. And I would guess you probably don't know either, commenter, but I don't know that for sure. That doesn't necessarily mean fear of engulfment is stronger at all, because maybe your texting was just inconvenient for her. And then the commenter said, or I would ask her if she would come to visit me when I leave, and she would stonewall, and she would not really respond. Well, that's really healthy too, isn't it? No, not. That doesn't indicate any kind of recovery on the horizon. The commenter says, basically, anytime I ask for more closeness. Okay, so you think that means fear of engulfment, but not necessarily when you're not close, because She's fearing abandonment and you're leaving again. And so it's not fear of engulfment. And if you actually get close versus asking for closeness, then it could be fear of engulfment and she'll push you away. But it doesn't sound like she's got, it shouldn't even sound like she's really that inundated with fear of abandonment where you're concerned, commenter, because she doesn't seem to be chasing after you at all. Now, can you relate to that? Maybe others listening and like, this will be painful to hear, but these relationships don't work out. And how much more of your life, your time, and you're losing yourself and you're not even knowing yourself anymore. How much more of that do you want? How much more of that do you want to put yourself through? Because, at the end of the day, with all of this, more people than not, like 98 point whatever percent, a lot of people, you have to come to grips with who this person really isn't, that they don't know themselves, that they have BPD, that you have codependency, that this is a trauma bond, that it was oh so good and way too be good to be true in the beginning because it was too good to be true. And you're loving this person still, but you don't even know who they are. They don't know who. And so when he was trying to get more closeness, she didn't react well to it. Well, there could be, that doesn't mean fear of engulfment at that point necessarily, or that was stronger than fear of abandonment. I guess in the beginning of a relationship, she just viewed me as a 2-month fling, the commenter says. But we became close by the end of it. Well, how would you be so close if she's got such fear of engulfment? You're not making any sense, commenter. She was quite upset that I was leaving. Yeah, well, you were always coming and going, weren't you? Dude, like, what's up with that? Like, you have to look at your side of the fence, too. So she was upset with your coming and going, yeah. Seems to me maybe she had a lot of treatment. No, you said she had 5+ years of therapy. That doesn't mean she had any treatment per se. And she felt like she was immune to these things. Now you're just guessing. And frankly, you're just pissing into the wind, if I dare be so blunt. I think what had happened, see, I think you don't know, commenter, and your 3 years worth of BPD, research. I'm not seeing evidence of it here, except that you're jumbling a lot of stuff up. The commenter said, I think what had happened is she just had not been close to someone or had someone to care a lot about her. I think she tends to chase the cool boys. Well, I don't know about that, but it doesn't sound like you really hung around much to care about her. But, like, it's not your fault. If she has BPD, she's nowhere near the recovery that you think she's near. And 5+ years worth of therapy for somebody really engaging in a modality of recovery for BPD still may not be anywhere near recovery because it can take 8 to 16 years. Now, another comment on the same video underneath the last comment. This person is just commenting away to themselves. Well, I read about how bad they can act out, and she rarely did. She would also come back a day or two later and explain bad behavior. Well, that's often making excuses, not taking accountability, not taking personal responsibility. And then sounds like she would repeat it and come back and do the behavior again and then come back and maybe try to explain it, the bad behavior. What's that mean? How's that help? How's that her almost recovered? It's not. And then, or sometimes after an argument, she would immediately say it was going wrong for her. It was wrong for her to shout. But I guess she kept shouting in the arguments first, right? And then would say it was wrong for her. And then next argument, she'd shout again. This is not near recovery, commenter. And all the commenter says, but this only happened just as I was leaving. And I was in a bit of devaluation stage. A bit, eh? You think devaluation comes in bits and pieces, commenter? Oh, my. If anybody relates to some of what this commenter is saying, it's all over the map and very contradictory, and he's in the dance of illusionary fantasy for sure, because he does want to see if he could try again, then I'm not making light of this, and I'm not wanting to judge. I'm asking you as you're listening, think about this. Do you relate to any of this? Because if you do, you're in a world of hurt, and you need to look after yourself and not get back with the ex. No contact is what you need, but I'm out here to work with people who resonate with me on how to start making these changes after these relationships, because you need to work through the breaking of the trauma bond to really be able to change. For a lot of people that can't stop going back till they're working in therapy, even though they're going back, to break the trauma bond. The commenter continues, but this, her, I guess, shouting, this only happened. Just a second, a dog made me lose my place here. One of my little puppers. This only happened as I was leaving. Oh, yes, because of a bit of a devaluation stage. So I don't know. No, you don't know at all what you're talking about, commenter. It wouldn't have been a bit of devaluation. There's no such thing as degrees of the black and the white. When you're painted black, when you're devalued, you're toast. You're not just like crumpled up toast, you're toast. You might be even out of sight, out of mind by then. And when you say you don't know, that's pretty honest. And you need to listen to that sentence that you've said a couple times more than anything else you've said. Is it easier for them to admit fault when they are devaluing you? Is a question from the commenter. The question makes no sense, commenter. It's flawed. It's illogical. No, it's not easier for them to admit fault when they devalue you. It's usually much more difficult. You seem to have it all asked backwards, with all due respect. Commenter says, I just feel bad because a couple of times she tried to explain things to me. Oh, yeah, the good old BPD explanation. That's really going to change stuff, too. No, it doesn't. But I would sort of react to what she said. Ooh, the codependent in you. Interesting. And wouldn't continue listening. Well, you got to look at your side of the fence, commenter. Or my bit of reaction would just shut her down and she wouldn't continue. I had no idea she had BPD then. Yeah, but like now it sounds like you, commenter, don't think you have any responsibility for what you did too. The commenter said, I've actually spent the last 2 months, no, almost 3 months. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought he said 3 years. My goodness. Okay, now it makes sense. 3 months reading about BPD almost every day. Well, you must be reading the wrong people, the misinformed, the ones who are, doesn't sound like you've read sources that really have helped you understand a whole lot, commenter. And I say that with, all due respect and not meaning to judge. Now, there's another comment on this underneath this other comments on the same video. Commenter says, well, that's what she said at the end, that she can only have flings. I think what she was saying, now listen, if she said she can only have flings, I think that's what she was saying. And that's nowhere near BPD recovery, commenter. But here you go again. I think what she was saying is I had triggered her a couple of times. You think you only triggered her a couple of times? Okay. I mean, not that you're responsible for her triggers, but just saying. Do you think she only got triggered a couple of times? And she wasn't really sure in her head what was causing the bad feeling. Interesting thing about this commenter, and you show this throughout all your comments and everything too. You must be in massive cognitive dissonance, along with the fact that you've only been reading about for 3 months on BPD, and you really have it all mixed up. So that's not going to help you with where you are right now. Because you said, I think what she was saying, triggered her. That she really wasn't sure in her head what was causing the bad feeling. You know what? People with BPD don't think about how they feel. They just feel how they feel. And it's not about that she didn't know in her head what was causing her to feel. And it's not just a bad feeling. It's devastatingly traumatic feelings in emotional dysregulation that people with BPD have. So you minimize that too, commenter. And why would she know in her head what was causing her bad feeling that you're minimizing? But her emotional dysregulation. She wouldn't know that in her head any more than you know in your head as a codependent what causes you bad feelings and how you're in this cognitive dissonance place of, well, maybe you're not because you want to try to go back, but you're all mixed up, in my humble opinion. I don't know. Maybe other people will agree with me or disagree with me. Commenter continues, but very obviously the bad feeling, you're minimizing again. They don't just have bad feelings, okay? Was being caused by me leaving again. Oh, yeah, everything would just be about you. And everything would be about you just leaving. No, No, not at all. You could have stayed there and had an even worse experience than the way that you were discarded and cheated on, and that she can only have flings. I think you're missing something here, commenter. Sometimes when a borderline says something like, I can only have flings, yeah, maybe they really mean it. Maybe they know that. Maybe they probably don't know why, but you want to see if you can work this out with her again. Okay. I would recommend against it, but people got to do what people got to do. And then the commenter said, but somehow she couldn't see that. See what? What did you see that she couldn't see? Because I'm all kinds of confused by you. You're all over the map. What couldn't she see? Because what is it that you can't see? I can see there's lots you can't see, but I don't think you can see that right now, denying that you're a codependent. It was a bad feeling. Again, you're minimizing. You don't know how she felt at all. Was a bad feeling that bled into a lot of things in the last week. Because she's so close to recovery, right? And because it was just about your leaving. Come on, commenter. I hope this helps you. I hope it helps others. But what you're doing here is just going in circles, contradicting yourself. And I mean this with all due respect, but you're showing how little you actually understand BPD. But that's not the most important thing, because you're denying that you're a codependent, and that's what you really need to start understanding and get yourself working with somebody about that. Lest you do just try to get her back, and if she's around, she might fling with you again. But she's not someone close to recovery who's going to be able to give you any kind of stable relating. And you, in your denial of codependence, just to be absolutely blunt, but not meaning to judge, you're not ready for a healthy relationship either, commenter. So you might be ready for another fling of a trauma bond, but really, that'll be so painful. I don't recommend it. And then the commenter says, unfortunately, I didn't control my own emotions and didn't know that just because you didn't know she had BPD, how come you were emotionally out of control? Codependence, maybe, you think? You're going to stop denying that? Maybe? Commenter says, I didn't control my own emotions. And the fact you didn't know she had BPD, I mean, come on, you're responsible to control your own emotions and be able to cope with your own emotions regardless. And that's still true. And then the commenter continues, so I started to react to some of the things she said, and then I got painted black. Well, because she reacted to you reacting to some of the things she said. And I'm not trying to blame you. I'm just saying, don't you see how impossible this is and how much you have it all mixed up? And just because her wealthy family paid for 5 years of some kind of therapy, this person you're describing doesn't sound at all even remotely close to recovery, and you are codependent in denial. Yikes! This is a really dangerous place for you to be. So you got painted black, the commenter said, but I do think that me leaving was very traumatic for her again. Yeah, I know, but and it might well have been, but you keep parking it on that's all it was all about. Even though she's told you she can't do relationships, she just does flings. Even though she cheated on you. Even though you said you think she has a stable of guys that, she can just go to, and that she's promiscuous. What are you talking about here, dude? Your emotions, you're still not, understanding your emotions, and you have no logic in all of this. You don't really understand BPD. You're denying codependency, and yet you want to see if you can squeak back over there and make this work. You're in no place to do that, and she's in no place to do that. And if it works, it'll be a fling thing, and then it won't work anymore, even if you don't move away again. And then the commenter continues, and basically his moving away. That's why she doesn't want to see me again, even though now I'm actually going to be living in her town. Dude, your circles are tragic. Must be really painful. All those comments were on, except for the first one that I read, on the video, BPD treatment relationships end anyway. So that was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 comments, aside from the other comment that I read. And there are still more that this commenter's put out there, but I don't think we need to go through any more of them. Wait a minute, there is maybe one more. Commenter left a comment, the same commenter left a comment on the video I did, BPDX ghosted by a borderline, what now? And some of these videos may or may not be in the podcast, by the way, just for people's cross-referencing, if you're interested. Yeah, this comment was a little troubling. So the commenter says, I don't really get it. Why block someone with BPD? They need someone to love like anyone else. But commenter, you haven't heard me yet. They don't know how to love. They're not capable of love unless they really have actually healed and recovered. And the commenter left a link, which I don't usually really enjoy these, just saying, in comments. It's been the odd one I put. So this got held because of the link. And I went and watched the video. So there's this link here, and the commenter says, this short video is what stands out in my mind. Sure, because it's what you want to believe. With my ex, it's a difficult situation. They're all difficult situations. I think her friend group prioritizes partying and hooking up. Well, another reason why she's nowhere near recovery, commenter. At the same time, she has hiked the Camino Trail. I have no idea what that is. And also, she volunteered in Greece teaching immigrant kids. Well, wonderful. She can do other things, and people with BPD have talents and stuff, and that's great. But that doesn't, where does that fit in? I don't know. So, a commenter continues, she's done a lot of work, I'm quite sure. Are you really? Are you really sure? Because everything you're saying, you then have a ton more to say that tells me that she's nowhere near recovery. So I think you're dreaming. I think you're wishful thinking. I think that you're having cognitive dissonance massively, denying your codependency, that you just want to believe she's close to recovery. What do other people think? How are you relating to part of this? Are you in this unfortunate fantasy, painful, cognitive dissonant, heart and mind fighting each other, wanting them back, but oh, it's all impossible? And like, what do you think? Do you think that this commenter's ex, from all that I've shared that the commenter said, is anywhere near recovery? And do you think that the person that you might want so badly, is close to recovery too, because they said this or that? Or, Hoover, they make it sound real good, don't they? They tell you what you want to hear. They don't tell you where they are. They don't tell you what's true. But come back, Hoover you back in a couple weeks or 6 months, and they'll say, oh, I've changed and I get it now. Well, if you believe that, I'd like to sell you the Brooklyn Bridge. But unfortunately, when people, suspend what's going on in their head and their rational mind and get all caught up in the feelings again, this isn't helpful, right? So anyway, this commenter is just a walking, unfortunate, traumatic, painful contradiction, I think is the best way to put that. And where am I here? Okay. So the commenter is quite sure she's done a lot of work. Talked about pros and cons list when reconsidering me the first time I left. Basic cognitive behavioral therapy exercise doesn't make for a lot of work necessarily, And commenter says she brought me from black back to white near the end. But during a bit, he calls it a bit of devaluation. I mean, devaluation is devaluation. It's not a bit. But during a bit of devaluation, as the commenter continues to think that exists, she still worked to explain her behavior. She apologized a couple times. That's good. They work to explain their behavior. They might even apologize sometimes, but their behavior doesn't change. So what's going to be different next time? And as for her bringing you back from black to white, not so sure that you might have gauged that properly. Just saying. I don't know. It's very uncommon. And by the way, if somebody's close to recovery with BPD, they won't paint you to black again to have to bring you back to white. So you're still not making sense to me, commenter, that she's anywhere near recovery. And you have a boatload of work to do on your side of the fence with you're not feeling like you're a codependent, but with all of this codependent stuff. and lack of understanding of BPD that you've been pushing around here in contradictory circles. And it's just coming out of my mouth because you wrote it. Okay. And then the commenter continues, so there are hopeful signs. I don't think the signs that you think are hopeful are actually hopeful signs, commenter. Again, the cause of my discard was me leaving plus me guilt tripping one day for the breakup. That's what you think, commenter. It won't only be that. I can promise you that. And remember, you said she doesn't do relationships. She has flings. She cheated on you. Her friends that she prioritizes, you said, her friend group she prioritizes, prioritizes along with her, because she's involved with them, partying and hooking up. You said she thought she had a stable of men to go to and that she was promiscuous. But now you're like, there are some hopeful signs. Excuse me? Where? Where? And I'm only saying it this way because I'm hoping if other people relate in part or to this commenter, that you might wake the heck up and realize that you're fooling yourself. What's that Styx song? You're fooling yourself if you don't believe it. In other words, that she's nowhere near recovery and that you have codependency, you have some issues, didn't have control over your emotions, you probably likely still don't, and you can't just validate her and make it all okay because you have codependency, you have issues, and in a trauma bond between a codependent and a person with borderline personality disorder, it's not just the person with BPD that brings the whole trauma bond. People with codependency bring their part of what becomes a trauma bond dynamics, as the people with BPD do, between a person with BPD and a codependent. So the commenter says, so there are hopeful signs. I don't see them. Do you see them? If you're listening to this, you're going through your own thing, you're wondering, I hope something about this helped. It's not meant to be judgmental. Yeah, it's pretty blunt because this person's pretty lost. Do you feel like you're lost? Can you relate to some of his confusion? Can you relate to how he's saying all of this stuff over here, which clearly she's not anywhere near recovery, but then there's his fantasy wants on the other side, and when he chooses to want to believe in his codependent denial, and then he says, so there's hopeful signs. It's sad, really. It's going to be so painful for this commenter if he continues down this road of utter confusion and cognitive dissonance, etc. Commenter continues. Again, the cause of my discard was me leaving, plus guilt trip. Oh, yeah, I think I read that. But, no, you think that was the cause of your discard. I'm sure it played a role, but it wouldn't be the only cause. And then the commenter says, after everything I've shared with you, the commenter says, she's just so sweet. Partying, hooking up, promiscuous, cheated on him, discarded him, painted him all to black. Wealthy families giving her some, quote, therapy, but nobody knows what that's about. And this commenter, in utter fantasy and turmoil and not understanding BPD whatsoever, says, she's just so sweet. How sweet is she when she's screwing another guy because she's hooking up and partying with her friends? Like, you got your head in the clouds, my man. I'm sorry to tell ya. Commenter continues, most of the time during idealizing, she was a bit over the top. You complaining about that, eh? Okay. Well, guess what? That idealization had nothing to do with you. She didn't see you. It might have felt good for you and everything, but it wasn't really real. And she didn't connect to you. And she didn't fall in love with you. And she didn't attach to you. It was all about her experiencing unconsciously with you in the idealization phase the feeling of having a good object other parent that she probably never had. So she never really saw you. And they don't really re-idealize. But you said in the idealizing phase, she was a bit over the top. Only after sex would she lay on the idealization. Well, but you think she's so close to recovery. Hello? No. So the commenter says, so these seem like signs. Huh? It's making my head hurt. Commenter says, So these seem like signs she was mentalizing. A little bit of mentalizing here and there can happen to anybody with BPD, just saying. Doesn't mean that they're really learning mentalization and what that means, and not that that is the way to finding the lost self in people with BPD by itself either. But like, what sign she was mentalizing? Excuse me, what? I don't know about you if you've listened to all this, other people, but I'm confused. And now the commenter says, and I don't know if this is sarcasm or absolutely what he wants. I have no idea. And I'm sorry that I don't know. Oh, AJ. And I'm reading it with a certain tone, right? So commenter says, oh, AJ, would you help me reconnect with her? I mean, that wouldn't be my goal, but if you wanted to work with me, I would like to first help you understand codependency and what it is that you are seeking in fantasy and cognitive dissonance and a vast misunderstanding of BPD. I'm sorry to say, commenter, because I mean, you've been reading about it for 3 months, but you haven't been listening to reliable sources that know what they're talking about, which would suggest I really believe and know that I am one of those reliable sources who knows what I'm talking about inside out. And I try to say that with humility. It's awkward to say that. And then the commenter says, I'm also feeling guilty that I did seem to destabilize her when I left the first time. Okay, there is hardcore evidence of codependency right there. So if we haven't seen enough already, boom, there it is for sure, said by you, commenter. So how do you say, I don't think I'm a codependent? And then you said, I think she got back into going out and partying to get over the feelings. Well, maybe to a point, but commenter, people with BPD don't go out partying and trying to get away from certain feelings because it was all about you. Because people with BPD, when they're in a relationship or a fling thing with you, they're never really thinking much about you, if at all. It's always about them. So, no, she was probably doing what she wanted to do to just feel the way she likes to feel at the expense of anybody. It wasn't all about you. Might have been a little bit, but it wasn't all about you. And I'm sorry to say that because that could be hurtful for a lot of people to hear, but that's true. This is something else people have to accept, get into a healing recovery process. And I'm out here to work with those who resonate with me. And the commenter then said, could also be promiscuity, maybe even drugs. Oh, yeah, well, you don't seem to know at all, but that would be another indicator. Is that one of the hopeful signs, commenter? Or is that a sign of her mentalizing, commenter? Or is that a sign of what I've been saying all along? She is nowhere near recovery. I wonder what you think about that comment. So, a commenter said could also be promiscuity, maybe even drugs. Well, more than likely is all of these things. I don't see where you see these as hopeful signs. These are not signs of mentalization. These are not signs that she's anywhere near recovery, commenter. What are you doing? What are you going to do to yourself? Why this person? Why do you have to go back to her? Because you still don't understand BPD. And I'm saying that with a helpful spirit, no judgment, but I want to be honest with you, commenter, and hope that that helps anybody else who might think they understand BPD a whole lot more than maybe they do. And there are some people out there that understand it more, but I'm not sure how much they're listening or needing to hear this podcast because they kind of know more. And like I said, it's not all about focusing on knowing more about the borderline. You need to know more about yourself. Don't you think this commenter? I don't know how the commenter feels, but if you're listening, what do you think about this commenter? I mean, are they not really lost? Can you relate to their lostness? Are you still really lost in the cognitive dissonance and the head heart battle and still kind of trauma bonded and wanting that just another taste of that intermittent reinforcement? Because when it's good, it's so darn good, but like you're throwing yourself, your soul, your life, your peace, your emotional stability away for what? Something that, whether it's the physical stuff or other things, that's so good when it's good, but it's horrible when it's not. You are in a trauma bond and you're going to reenact the same pattern. So I hope if you relate to this and what I just said, that you will seriously think about doing something different or reaching out if you resonate with me so we can talk about your situation, start to help you with this. And then the commenter said, I'm just feeling bad that I may have done something to send her backwards on the healing journey. Well, commenter, that's another codependent statement, first of all, that you think you have responsibility for where she is if she's backwards on the healing journey. Because, commenter, there's nothing you've shared, and you've shared even more than I've read, which is a ton here, and that's fine. You can do that. But what you've really shared, it bites with itself to the point where I don't know that you sent her backwards on any healing journey, because even if she has done some therapy that's mattered a bit here and there, she's nowhere near recovery. And why would you take responsibility that anything that you did might have sent her backwards on the healing journey? See how codependent that is, Mr. I'm not codependent. I don't think I'm a codependent. Why do you want to hold responsibility for where she might be or going backwards or if she ever went forwards in the healing journey from BPD when you're not responsible for what she does or doesn't do? But you kind of seem in a parallel way to not be taking responsibility for yourself, as well as you're trying to take responsibility for her, and yet you're saying, oh, but these are hopeful signs and she's mentalizing and she's so close to recovery. The reason I've read so many of your comments, commenter, this is one of the most series of comments. You're one of the most commenters that I think is more codependent, and you're denying the codependency. Lots of people do that, but I think you really need to wake up there, and that's just my 2 cents worth. You can take it or leave it. And the other thing I just wanted to say about the beginning of this last comment, when they put a link and they said this short video is what stands out in my mind. Well, and then they went on to say with their ex, it's a difficult situation, yada, yada, yada. Like I'm saying she's not sounding, from what the commenter shared, anywhere near recovery, anywhere near relationship ready. He's not relationship ready. He's denying he's a codependent. This is a trauma bonded situation. It will just repeat itself. But the link that he did share, I meant to just say quickly, as this has been forever. I know it's long. Some people like long, some people really don't. The short video that the commenter shared in the link, let me just click on it right here. It's on Borderliner Notes. It's BPD Recovery Requires Good Relationships by Peter Fonagy. And Peter Fonagy is well respected around issues like BPD, around attachment, and other things of that nature. However, well, let me just play a bit of this for a minute.
That without a network of relationships, it is impossible for an individual for borderline personality disorder to adequately recover. And it needs to be a set of relationships that are mentalizing, which is just a silly word for saying that they feel understood, treated as agents, taken seriously, that where decisions are shared with them.
Okay, so that's a bit of that. That was about 35 seconds of what was a minute and 36. The point is, I'm not saying Peter Fonagy is wrong, or Fonagy. I'm not sure how to say his name. I've read some of his work, though. I'm not saying he's wrong, but you can't get the borderline in a, quote, relationship healthy enough, especially when you're a codependent as well. When it's a trauma bond, if they're not in active treatment for BPD in the modalities that are efficacious for the treatment of BPD and recovery from BPD, as Peter Fonagy says, I'm not sure if I'm saying his name right, BPD recovery requires good relationships. But how does that work when the untreated or the not well treated or the undiagnosed, but what people, the patterns of all of it, they can't relate goodly? And I said that awkwardly for a reason. So BPD recovery requires good relationships, only they can't have good relationships. they can't get to good relationships. So what I would say about that is that could be true when somebody's really mentalizing and more, finding self, been through many years of treatment, whatever that takes, in an efficacious modality of treatment, which mentalization, that therapy, it's not bad, but it's not like transference focused psychotherapy or object relations therapy. And of course, DBT is not a recovery modality. So BPD recovery, he says, requires good relationships, but they can't get into a good relationship. They get into relationships with either narcissists, psychopaths, or codependents. And so the people that they get into relationship with can't provide them more often than not with good relationship. And you can't make a good relationship when the person with BPD can't join you in it. So what does this really mean? First and foremost, I would like to add that although I was, in part of my recovery, I was in a relationship with another borderline or somebody with more BPD than I had. That relationship didn't do squat for my recovery. It was the relationship in the modality in which I was being treated. It was the relationship to, because I was in group therapy, therapists that were available in different parts of the program. And it was those good relationships that helped me find myself, that helped me to define myself, that helped me to learn how to regulate my emotions, that effectively, once the container of self was formed within me through this therapy, then I could be reparented. And that's the type of good relationship that can take place with a therapist and a client or patient with BPD. That's the kind of good relationship that can be fostered in transference focused psychotherapy, in object relations therapy, much more so than any other types of the modalities. And that is the key good relationship. The one where the person with BPD learns that even in the bad times, or even in the splitting, or even in the evaluation, this therapist has something that they need, and that they're still supported even when they're mad as heck at the therapist. And then they need to open up, and then they need to learn about vulnerability, and then they need to craft this relationship, which between a therapist in the good relationship in transference focused psychotherapy or object relations therapy, the therapist is holding the space and the transference is golden. And everything that would otherwise break a relationship apart and have the borderline discard someone and maybe go round and around but get nowhere, there are things built into the process that when somebody with BPD engages the quote good relationship, it's best engaged with the expert therapist in the two modalities I've mentioned, that then the person has an opportunity to have the therapist holding the transference and allowing to a degree in the beginning of the process for that transference, and that, like when it's really negative and devaluing, to have the equal space of when there's something positive happening, and helping somebody with BPD to come to understand so much about self, but also to help them to start to move beyond the splitting. And all of these things are predicated on different stages of how people can move through this process. But I don't think that the good relationship for most people with BPD is going to be with a partner. I don't think it's going to be necessarily with friends. I don't think it's going to be the favorite person, because none of you in any of those, or a family member, nobody in all those relationship types can ignore their own needs, abandon themselves to give what's necessary, and can be given in a therapeutic way by a professional in a therapeutic situation where the therapist, as I know when I work with people with BPD, you already know this is not mutuality and reciprocity. But if you think that, and as he's talking about the good relationship, it's not until they're almost really for sure healed and recovered that they can do this with somebody else. So that can be like something that one comes to learn in their healing recovery journey with BPD. But the good relationship that I would say and advocate for firstly, for mostly, and for quite a long time, it's not the codependent, it's not the narcissist, it's not the psychopath, it's not whoever they're with, and you're having trouble and you have to like be canceled, negated, not seen, not heard, not loved, not attached to, but somehow you're going to support this person like emotionally. You can't help them, you can't fix them, you can't change them, and you can't rescue them. So I would say that the most important good relationship is a relationship in a modality of transference focused psychotherapy or object relations therapy with a skilled professional like myself who understands this stuff inside out and can provide that holding environment and more for the person with BPD, with the negative transference and the positive transference and the back and the forth. And that should only be done by therapists because that's what we do. And we know that we're working with a client to build a relationship, yes, a therapeutic relationship, but that we don't have skin in the game and we're not looking for mutuality and reciprocity back. It's not that kind of a relationship. So if you think that you can still be the hero to the borderline, whether you're a female with a male borderline or male with a female borderline, or they discarded, it's your ex, or it's been years and you're still in the tortured cognitive dissonance and rumination of actively wanting this person back, still in the trauma bond, even if you've been no contact or they discarded you and you've never heard from them for months or years. You need to do your own work. And so this commenter, doesn't surprise me, would take a 1:36 clip, really emotionally put across by Peter Fonagy, I'm not sure which. Sorry in pronunciation. I'm quite familiar with his work. The best, quote, good relationship is a therapeutic relationship for healing and recovery from BPD. Is there the odd person that might do some of that because they've had enough therapy already to continue through the rest of the work, that they might have a more stable partner or somebody that's healed their codependency and they're really far down? That's rarer. And again, I would draw your attention to the fact and reality that you really need to know, you really need to work with somebody to at least ascertain, like this commenter does not know, where your borderline or the BPDX is in reality, and where you're not seeing maybe a lot of that reality, or it's fighting with itself, like all this commenter's comments and everything he said, which really it seems like he's more in a fantasy land than reality with where his ex is really at. And he says, I think this, and because of that, and this and that. And he clearly doesn't understand what he's talking about. And it's really hard to know all this. So the point I'm trying to make here is, so he said there were good signs, but then he said, hey, I think it's, she's promiscuous and there's drugs involved and other things. And she's partying and hooking up, and she has a stable of guys. And she told me she can't do relationships, only flings. I mean, are you hearing what I read? What I'm hearing me say? What he said? Are you hearing this? Because you might be stuck in some of this yourself in thinking that now you really clearly understand BPD. So, you could validate them more. You could provide that, quote, good relationship, but you can't. Because you have to save yourself. You have to find yourself because you've lost yourself. You have to stop self-abandoning yourself. You have to go no contact or work toward that, working with someone. I work with people wherever you want to work with me. If I resonate with you, you can go to ajmahari.ca/sessions. I work with people where they are. And no, I'm not going to tell you what to do. I'm going to listen to you. I'm going to listen to your circumstance, the whole situation, what's going on. We're going to talk about it in a hopefully realistic way, allowing for the fact that you may well still be in a fantasy, an illusion, that it's coming from your childhood woundedness and you might not be consciously aware of that, and that you're still trauma bonded and that you're still having this head-heart fight. and that you think you might know BPD way better than you do. Because even for clients I have that know BPD much better than this commenter, I don't like to measure or judge. It doesn't help them to understand themselves. And for instance, when the commenter talked about, well, I wasn't in control of my own emotions, it sounds to me like he pretty much still isn't. And he's still denying the codependency, made abject codependent statements. So I hope this was helpful. I hope it will help the commenter. Sometimes commenters get really, peeved at me. But I would just quote Judge Judy at this point, right? Because I said, like, this commenter doesn't understand BPD very well, doesn't understand himself, which is more important, denies his codependency, doesn't yet have any grasp of that, or maybe hasn't looked into that. So as Judge Judy once said, don't piss on my foot and tell me that it's raining. That's what this commenter's been doing. Pissing on his own foot and saying, well, it's just raining. Or pissing into the... Well, there's a Canadian joke, right? And we mean this in not a derogatory, horrible way, at least I do, to Newfoundlanders in Canada. So there is this awful joke, a Newfoundlander, a Newfie joke is what they're called. I love people from Newfoundland, by the way. How does a Newfie take a shower? He pisses into the wind. How can you kind of think about that? And excuse my a little bit, not really vulgarity, but that was a little bit much. But think about that for a minute, because if you were to go outside and literally try that, you would be having this fantasy, codependent kind of confused. You think you understand what a shower is, but if you have a shower that way, you're just going to get dirtier and more unclean and, sticky and icky and yuck. You're not going to actually have a shower. So if you continue to do the same things and like this commenter, denying codependency, thinking that all of the things that he cited that show she's nowhere near recovery are, quote, good signs of her, quote, mentalizing, unquote, you're not having a relationship. It's like the commenter said, his ex said, she can't have relationships, she can only have flings. So you might think that you're going to go back and have a relationship, but it's like pissing in the wind and calling it a shower. And it's more devastating than even if one actually literally did what I just said, because there's no change in you. You've lost yourself. And there's going to be no change in the borderline. And like I've also said often, when they come a hoovering or you reverse hoover or whatever, then both of you end up saying things that sound terrific, but they're not based in reality. And I'm saying people with BPD do that even more than people with codependency. Don't be subsumed by the fantasy of what was so good, it was too good to be true, that you're going to get that back, or that this person, if you think you still love them, or you may actually feel that you still love them, and you're still attached to them, but you're trauma bonded to them, you think you love them. You think they might have loved you. Oh, so many clients say to me, for a while anyways, in sessions, until they really do learn, and they really do figure this out for themselves, not just me saying stuff. They're like, but I know that he loved me. I know that she loved me. No, you'll come to realize in a process, caring more about yourself right now, focusing on you, which is painful and difficult, and codependents often don't even know how to do it. I'm out here to work with you if I resonate with you. If you would like to focus on you, if you would like to have me answer any and all questions you could possibly ask about the person, your BPD ex, or the person with BPD in your life, I will listen to you. I will answer your questions based on all you tell me, just like I've done this entire endless podcast based on all that this person said. Because if you relate to some things that this commenter said, if you relate to the idea that, well, if my borderline tells me I should get away from them or they're no good for me, they must really know what they're talking about. They must be almost recovered, or anything of the sort like that. It's fantasy. It's what you so badly wish was true. But borderline's untreated. Okay, first of all, undiagnosed, patterns of, diagnosed, untreated, maybe had some quote therapy, but maybe not in the right modalities, maybe not really working on BPD recovery. They don't know how to love you because they don't know who they are. They don't like themselves. They don't know themselves. We have to, each individual human being, to love another, we must know how to love, or at least like or care about ourselves. And people with BPD don't know that unless and until way down the road of treatment for real, not like this commenter's BPDX. And the other thing I really want to make a big, big point of is the good relationship that's really going to heal a person with BPD who's hungry for it, going after it, wanting it only for themselves, is the quote good relationship that they can create with the help of a therapist who specializes in the treatment of borderline personality disorder. In transference-focused psychotherapy, primarily, or object relations therapy, more so than any other modality. And I'm not putting down mentalization, but it might be it's a part of these other processes, but it is not the most significant part. And people with BPD, when they come a hoovering, even if it's been a year or 2 or 5, or it's been 6 months or 2 weeks, they will not have changed. They will not be different. They might have a couple of things that they've got a little bit better, but it won't be the core relational things that relationships need to have in reciprocity and mutuality between two healthier people than a person with codependency and a borderline. Judge Judy said, "Don't piss on my foot and tell me it's raining." And just think about why I would quote Judge Judy and why I would use these two metaphors or whatever, right? Pissing into the wind and thinking you're taking a shower. Someone telling you, pissing on your foot and telling you it's raining. What borderlines do all the time. They'll give you this little bit of fleeting insight on something that they don't really understand. And you'll be like, oh my God, they understand. There's hope now. No. That's your codependent lostness and how bad it hurts. And if you haven't done any of your healing recovery work yet, you won't know what that's tied to from your childhood, where that is either in adverse experience in your childhood or trauma. And lots of people don't realize that you don't have to have abusive, horrible, or cluster B parents to be hurt by a parent who doesn't in any way intend to hurt you when you're a young child. So there's always, I find with the clients that come to me saying, I don't know, I had a great childhood. I mean, come on. Well, when we start to unpack that, we will find, I have found with every client I've ever worked with, something that they wouldn't have even, like sometimes it is trauma. Sometimes it is really big, horrible, awful, life-changing stuff. And with cluster B parents, etc. But for lots of people, no, your parents aren't BPD or NPD, or maybe you think your father, like maybe a parent. But the thing is, it doesn't always have to be that. Maybe it was just hardships, parental depression, intergenerational trauma. Parents break up. Mom has to go to work 2 jobs. You never see her. Certain things happen at young ages in your life, not because your mother's doing anything to you on purpose. She's trying to love you and give you the best. But when parents can't emotionally be as available as children need, woundedness to trauma can occur in really unintentional ways. It is every bit as a codependent response to that as to a cluster B parent or a cluster B and alcoholic parent, and that kind of woundedness and trauma. So if you resonated, and I know this is ultra long, but if you resonated with anything that this commenter was all over the map with, then I hope you realize that you're being more subsumed in fantasy, the trauma bond, the cognitive dissonance, and the rumination than in the reality of what you still need to learn, not only maybe more about a person with BPD, but specifically the one you were with or you still want to be with, or whatever cycle or limbo place you're in, or if you haven't talked to them for years, but you're still jonesing for them And this is so real and painful for so many people because the trauma bond hasn't been broken. So what you need to realize is that you do need to work with someone that you resonate with. And I'm out here, I resonate with lots of people, but not everybody. And you need to get into this healing and recovery journey so that you can find your way through what you're not consciously aware of, what you are in fantasy and false hope about, and a whole lot of other stuff that holds you in that trauma bonded cognitive dissonance, ruminating, hellish kind of pain of you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. I went through so many comments, and even not all of them, from this commenter, because I just think, and I hope the commenter understands, I feel for you, commenter. I'm not judging you. I'm not trying to be a smart, a smart ass with you. I don't say what I've said lightly. I say it from a place of expertise because people like the commenter and anybody that relates to any parts of it, or if you're still just in your own hell with all of this, you need to be able to be shaken a little, just to hear something maybe you don't want to hear, to consider it. Get mad at me if you have to. Yell and scream back at me as I'm saying what I'm hearing. You don't want to hear what I have to say. Do whatever you need to do. But please reflect on if something is that I've said made you really angry, or if you think I'm being too hard on the commenter, or if the commenter is going to say, wow, you just really like gone all over me, like what's the matter with you? I'm really here to keep it real, to help people heal. And I'm going to do that like I've done it for almost 30 years online now. I'm going to tell you the truth. Like lots of people on my YouTube channel have said, clients say to me who listen to the podcast and come to work with me, wow, when I heard this and I heard that, or people comment on my YouTube channel, I needed to hear this, but wow, but ouch. I needed to hear this, but wow, this hurts. Or people sometimes a little mad at me, but then thanking me for the message or the education, whatever you may take it to be. So this is with the intent only of helping. And sometimes in this realm, I know because I've had a lot of feedback from podcast listeners and clients, but feedback from people on the YouTube channel too. Ooh, I didn't really want to know this. And people have said to me that have come to work with me, I listened to you 5 years ago. I did it. And then I went and listened to a bunch of other people and I tried and we recycled the relationship 30 times. And then I don't know, I just saw something else of yours on YouTube, or I found your podcast, and all of a sudden it hit me. Oh my God, what have I been doing to myself? I can't take this anymore. I don't know how to stop wanting this borderline back, but like I can't do it anymore. So the head says firmly, this hurts too much. I got to stop it. And the heart says, I don't know how. What am I going to do? I can't stand it. I'm in so much pain without this person. Just know if you can relate to those feelings, and if that's where you are, or you've been, or you partially still are, it means you're still trauma bonded. It means you need to understand not more about BPD, more about you and what wounded you in your childhood. What is a wounded inner child in you, or a part, or different ages and stages of a wounded inner child in you? What are they still reeling from in the past? Feeling abandoned by you, you've abandoned yourself. What is it that you know what? For people with codependency and you want your borderline relationships to work out and they're not gonna, it's that wounded inner child in you that you can find by working with someone like me. That's who needs your rescue. That's who you can fix. That's who's screaming out to you today. And that's who's causing you more pain than even the BPDX or the BPD on and off again or the BPD relationship recycling. Because it's not all about the borderline. It's not all about the borderline. It's lots about the borderline, but it's not all about the borderline. So I hope this helps. I know it might be a tough message and a darn long one to listen to. I believe in depth and substance and honesty. And yeah, I mean, I really, really do care that this message might really hurt people or bring up your pain. I mean, I'm not trying to hurt you, but might bring up pain, could trigger you, if you have codependency even. And for that, I really care about how people will receive this. But I know that if I did anything less than what I just did for you here, I would be being codependent. I would be holding back. I would be playing into your fantasy. I would be playing into your cognitive dissonance. I would be playing into the war between your heart and your head. And you're in this battle because you don't yet know what hurt you in childhood and what your inner child is going through and how much of why you ended up with this person with BPD. I'm sure he was for women, the greatest looking man you ever met. And for men, the hottest woman you could ever dream of being with. Same for lesbians, lesbian women, gay men, men. So, yes, as an adult, you were attracted to that person because of that, right? I mean, that's attraction and everything. But what people don't realize until they start doing the healing and recovery work, getting out of these relationships, which is part of the healing and recovery work for many people. What you don't realize is that all this pain and agony that you think belongs only to this person, that you feel like you've got to be with no matter how much it hurts you, and you abandon yourself because otherwise, what is there in the world? Well, you don't know yourself and you don't know how much you're being driven unconsciously by the wounded inner child or the traumatized inner child in you that is seeking reparation for something that happened in your past, that you're not doing that consciously, but that doesn't work in relationships with borderlines because they don't even see you or hear you, or rarely do, and they're mostly trying to survive their own stuff. And and some people have left comments on my I don't remember what videos recently, but a few videos recently where people are starting to share conversations that they had with a person with BPD, whether they're broken up now or not. And there was one recently, I can remember part of it just so I can make this last forever. No, that's not the point. The person had the flu and they've been really sick for 2 days. And so I guess their person with BPD called them, their partner at the time with BPD called them and wanted to tell them something or ask them something, and then said something I don't recall, sorry, but it wasn't about the person, or might have said, "How are you?" And they said, "Well, I'm really sick. I have the flu and I really feel horrible." And then the BPD partner said, "Cool." And then she said, "Well," and then he said, "No, but like I really feel horrible and I'm really sick." And then she said, "Well, we'll talk soon." And it doesn't matter that I didn't get the whole conversation accurate. I forgot a part of it. The point is that if you think about it, when you need them, you have a loved one who's facing a big battle of illness, chronic illness, or a loved one that passes, or just all of these things in life that happen, right? And I've had so many clients explain to me that they're in this relationship with a person with BPD, and it's maybe like there's problems, but they still don't know what's happening. And then maybe say a parent of theirs dies, or a best friend in a tragic accident, or a sibling, or somebody just gets really ill, and the borderline's nowhere around to support you because they can't deal with reality. They can't deal with their own pain. They're not going to be able to step forward and have any empathy for what you're going through. And have you ever noticed when you're meeting their needs or you're trying real hard, it's never good enough anyway? Sometimes, but not really, most of the time. But then if you have a need, if you'd like them to stop raging at you, if you'd like them to stop giving you the silent treatment, if you'd like them to see and hear you when you're sick, if you'd like a bowl of soup to be brought over to you or something, and a little TLC because you're sick, do you ever get it? No, but you give, and they take, 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 take. So please remember that in order for you to feel better, it's going to be a little bit painful. or a lot painful for a while, but you need to lean into the adversity of the healing and recovery journey to survive the BPD relationship breakup, to break the trauma bond, to reach in and understand what happened to you in childhood, and to heal your codependency. And to be able to heal from this relationship, go no contact, and move on. Because to be doing anything else, you're just pissing into the wind and you think you're having a shower. It's just the heart plays games with the head, and it will mislead you all your life long if you're not careful. These relationships really, really super rarely ever work out. And if it's a person with the patterns of BPD not diagnosed, it's a person diagnosed, not treated, you have codependency to varying degrees or any other issues from childhood trauma, it's a trauma bond and it's not what you thought it was. And you're loving somebody and you don't know who they are because they don't know who they are. And even when they idealized you, what you couldn't know then was they never really saw you at all. You didn't have value to them the way that it felt because it seemed like you were the greatest thing since sliced bread. But they were just trying to please you. They were just trying to get acceptance from you so they could seek identity through you. And I don't believe that most people with BPD don't do this. It's not conscious. It's not on purpose. It's not to just get you and annihilate you. But it has a lot of these horribly negative, painful, losing yourself. Lots of clients I'm working with more and more these days coming to sessions saying they feel like they don't even want to live anymore. These are the codependents who are trying to survive the BPD relationship, recycling and or breakup, not just people with BPD. Be careful lest you end up there so lost, so hurt, so apart from yourself that you don't know how to go on with or without this other person who's annihilating you. And for some reason that's hooked back into your childhood, you feel like you need to go with that, even though it breaks people down. Some people do lose their lives to this. And I'm not talking, obviously, some people with BPD do, but loved ones, exes, people with codependency. And some of the most difficult situations with clients to help them survive is people who are the codependent, the hurt party, the traumatized person in the trauma bond, not the borderline. Codependents and ex-loved ones of people with BPD who don't know how to go on living anymore. And I have way more actually clients like that over time in the recent, maybe like last 3 to 5 years and currently than ever before. And I don't work with as many people with BPD as I do people on the other side to survive the BPD relationship, heal your codependency, break the trauma bond. But I'm not saying it's 50-50 across the board at all. But the rise of suicidality and people who've been with people with BPD and been discarded, ghosted, discarded, etc., and then maybe ultimately discarded, like, and it's over, and what do you do with yourself? People aren't doing well. They aren't able to function at work. They get really depressed. You've lost yourself. And to varying degrees, a more significant number of people who are exes of people with BPD are having a lot of difficulty seeing their way to continuing to live. And you don't want to become a statistic. You don't want to throw yourself and your life away for this person that was so much in the beginning, but it's been diminishing returns ever since the first splitted evaluation. So the answer isn't really learning tons and tons about BPD. It's not listening to people out there who tell you why and how to get your ex back. Because when most people get an ex back, you don't need to pay somebody for that, by the way. But when people do get an ex back, you have to be so gamey to do it half the time. You're abandoning yourself again and your values. And who are you? You've lost yourself. And when you do all these like crazy things people say out there to get them back, all this game playing, all this manipulation that you'll have to go through to do it, you're gonna, if you get them back, you're not going to get anything different back. You're going to go around another cycle, and they're split to the valuations. They speed up faster, and if they ghosted you, discarded you, however the breakup happens, it will happen faster and faster each cycle. So please stop kidding yourself. And I know you don't mean to be kidding yourself, but this commenter, again, I feel for you, commenter. I hope that you can listen to this, and then it might be helpful for you, because you are fooling yourself. You are subsumed in a trauma bond. You are subsumed in a fantasy, and your 3 months of worth of reading about BPD, I would just gently suggest to you, has led you more astray, and that you need to focus on your codependent denial, the reality you likely have codependency. Well, you've made codependent statements, etc. You need to look for your way forward, and it's not by going back to the fling thing, because you didn't cause so much of her discarding you as you think, nor was it only a one trick pony issue. There's so much more going on with that ex of yours than it seems you can even mentalize or understand for yourself. And now there's a twist to this that wasn't available or there when I first recorded this. And so I'm adding this in the lengthy, if you can imagine, hours worth of editing process, because just yesterday, this commenter, who I've been sharing many of their comments on my YouTube channel, commented again on the video that I did, BPDX ghosted by a borderline, what now? And this is the final comment from this commenter at this point. Okay, so as of, what is this? It's October 2nd, and this will probably go up on the 3rd because it's around 11:30 p.m. And I'm editing this, but I recorded it, I think, 2 days ago. So the commenter has now added this comment. Here's the twist. And the commenter says, unfortunately for the commenter, but I think what I laid out is what more often than not, by a long shot, happens. So the commenter added just yesterday, AJ, you were right. I just found out that my sweet, quiet ex with BPD, so their sweet, quiet ex, still to them, right? The fantasy, the longing, the pissing into the wind and calling it a shower. He's come to realize, saying that my sweet, quiet ex with BPD had posted on, not sure what this word is, had posted on some place online, let's say, in between our times together. She wanted multiple men to join her and her, quote, long-term boyfriend, unquote, for MMF. This was 1 month after I had left town. I feel like vomiting. Empathy to you, commenter. An interesting twist that I got to add in at the end here. No joy in being, quote, right, unquote, because that's not what this is about. It's trying to be accurate to help people, yes, but to hear the commenter go, AJ, you were right, and that, what he just found out, my heart really goes out to you. And I hope, commenter, that you will, and anyone else listening that, resonated with any of this and made it to, it's almost over, really, I promise, the end, just adding this in here, really, empathy to the commenter, empathy to anyone else that relates with any of the comments or experience or denial of the commenter after BPD discard, codependent fantasy, stuck peeing into the wind in cognitive dissonance, thinking that you're going to get the relationship, i.e., pissing into the wind and calling it a shower. Sadly, so often it just ends like this for people, and it's devastating. So I hope that the commenter, maybe not with me, but if you resonate with me, reach out, please. Reach out to someone. Get yourself in your own healing recovery process, because you put so much time and effort and defense and everything into, oh, maybe I just have this negative thing going on and blah blah, and then like whatever, and all this other stuff. And sadly, as I rather kind of thought, because I've worked with thousands of people over 35 years, that it's good that you know what you know now, but wow, that hurts, and I feel for you. And anyone else that can relate to this comment at all, or maybe you've had that kind of turn that I'm just adding in here with the commenter commenting a day ago, that you've had that sudden, shocking, sickening, nauseating experience of finding out how much you really were in a fantasy and what your ex is really up to, and that it's all of your worst fears and it's everything that you denied. So let me just say it again, and pardon my language with this. But you don't go outside on a windy day and pee into the wind and consider that you've taken a shower. Well, you also don't try to have a relationship with a person with BPD or the patterns of, or diagnosed, untreated, not super well treated at all, that like they really have to get far down the road, that put so much from the beginning of how it felt. You enter this codependent denial, this abandonment of self, total focus on other, which you learned in childhood. That's codependency. That's a big part of codependency. You end up subsumed in this fantasy, and peeing in the wind does not for a shower make, any more than all this denial, hope. Remember how much the commenter said, this, that, the other thing. She's so close to recovery. I just know it. That's what happens for people in cognitive dissonance, and when it's really, really hard to see the truth. And I'm sorry the commenter found out what he did the way he did, but I hope that might help others as well to realize that if you can relate to anything that I've shared, all what this commenter has shared, which I'm glad he shared it all, and I'm sorry, but he's got to where he needs to be now, and I hope he can, I'm sorry he feels like vomiting, I hope he can action that into his own healing and recovery process, just as anybody who's listened this far, and almost at the end here, you may well too be somebody still in the battle of the cognitive dissonance and subsumed in the fantasy. And there's nothing more painful than staying stuck in that place. People with codependency have to stop following the feelings of the cognitive dissonance versus the head. And you have to stop. And it's hard because it's going to hurt. But then you have to get into a process of healing and recovery so you can be supported, so you can be heard, so you can be helped, so you can learn what you need to learn about you and how to heal and how to move forward and how to gain mastery, emotional mastery over cluster B abuse, and not mix up BPD abuse and BPD take for somehow they're the love of your life and that they love you at all, or that they've attached to you at all, when they really haven't. So anyway, I hope that wasn't too brutal. I hope it's helpful. It could be painful, but if you can relate to any of what this commenter said, then you, along with the commenter, I would gently suggest, would benefit from getting into your own healing and recovery journey and slowly waking up to what really is the source of your agony, which, yes, it has a lot to do with the person with BPD, but it has to do with something inside of you that you've been trying to escape by continually focusing on learning more about BPD or trying to get that borderline back. It's the last thing in the world you need. You need to find you. You need to focus on you. You need to work on healing you, starting right now.
You've been listening to the Surviving BPD Relationship Breakup Podcast with your host, counselor and trauma recovery coach, AJ Mahari. For more or get sessions with AJ, go to ajmahari.ca. See you next time.